Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Before this video starts, I just want to give a shout out to, of course, my wonderful members. The Battle of Paper Official, Jesse HOH, Plush Anime Game Adventures, Enchanted Stones, Vanilla Beans, Spacey Demoto, NASA YT, Jster, Levi OC, and David Hero. Thank you guys so much for the extra support. Now back to the video. Hey guys, TDI Fan 2024 here, and now that it is the 31st of December, now is a good time for me to rank all of the 2024 movies that I have seen this year from worst to best. Of course, this is just my opinion, just to put that out there. And of course, I would love to see how you guys would rank your movies down in the comments. And sorry if I sound sick, I am kind of sick at the moment. So probably thinking, why are you making this? Well, of course I gotta make this before the year ends. But, and also, I've done this for the last 2 years, so of course this year's going to be no different. Out of all of the 56 movies that I've watched this year, for the first time, of course, 38 of them are new releases. So those 38 films are what I will be ranking in this video. That's right, I did not have to talk about the Boss Baby Family Business, which is somehow the third highest viewed Guess What I Saw video for the year. What the heck? Anyways, of course, like I said, this is just my list. And if you want to see my entire list, even the movies like The Boss Baby or Back to the Future, where I'd rank them, then I'm going to have them in the pinned comment. The pinned comment of this video is going to have my complete list where I have all 56 movies ranked. But in this video, I'm only going to be ranking the 38 new releases. So, with that said, this may be controversial, but like I said, this is just my opinion, and I would love to see how you guys would rank the movies you've seen this year from worst to best down in the comments. So, yeah, with that said, let's just get on with the ranking.
So after all of that, then they become Spider Women. No, not at all.
This should not come as a surprise. Dead last on this list is the infamous Madame Web. This movie is just awful. The acting is horrible. The VFX is pretty bad. The story is horrible. Everything about this movie is horrible. I regret checking this one out on the big screen, but what can you do? Those who saw this movie know what I'm talking about. This was just a waste of time, and thank God that Sony is finally going to put an end to these Spider-Man-less movies, because this is not worth spending all of the money that they did for the movie, as well as not worth spending any of my money for watching it. This was such a waste of time, one of the most forgettable movies of the year, and I would rather pretend that this movie didn't even exist. That just goes to show how much I do not even like this movie. I prefer Morbius over this, and that's saying something. So yeah, Madame Web, that's what a film, what a disgusting piece of media that even exists. This movie just sucks, dead last, no contest.
Wow, Texas sure is magical.
Yeah, the Sandy Cheeks movie sure is a movie. One that does not need to exist, but it does. I mean, Sandy is an interesting character enough to get a spin-off. Like, you can see why they would make a spin-off that's revolving around this character. But how they handled it was just not it. Such wasted potential. I guess this was to be expected because SpongeBob has been declining year after year, so it makes sense why this movie blows. But, I mean, come on. What is there to say? They make the corniest jokes, the characters are as annoying as ever, the new characters aren't even good, and don't even get me started on those live-action human characters. Like, what? This movie was just such a waste of time that I would willingly go back in time to prevent myself from watching it in the first place. This movie is just bad, and I really hope the Plankton movie that they have planned to come out next year isn't as bad, but I really do not have any expectations after watching this movie. It really is that bad. Enough said.
Odie, I'm dreaming again. Slap me across the face.
This might be a hot take, or some of you guys may be questioning why I have this movie so low on the list, but what was the point of the Garfield movie? I'm just a casual when it comes to the Garfield franchise as a whole, so I already didn't even have much expectations for this movie, especially after the reveal of course, Chris Pratt voicing Garfield. After watching it, yeah, it's just whatever. The animation is nice and all, and I do like how they kept the designs to be very close to the original designs from the comics. But other than that, there really isn't anything to talk about. It's a boring family movie. You can tell that the actors didn't even try at all, especially Chris Pratt. He at least tried a bit with Mario, but he did not try at all to try to sound like Garfield, which is, of course, not great, and the plot sucks, and the new characters suck. This movie was just a waste of time, and Obviously, it's one of the most forgettable movies in my opinion. That's why it's so low on this list.
Can you grab my badonkadonk?
This movie was practically doomed from the start. I thought it would be at least a fun time, but it wasn't. The acting wasn't great, the effects are pretty bad, the jokes are bad. This movie is pretty much what you would expect from a generic movie where a group of misfits go on a journey to find something. It really stings because we are now in an age or an era of video game adaptations being really good, and then this comes out. So there really isn't much to say. I had hopes for Borderlands, even though I knew nothing about the games based on the trailer, and after watching it, I have to say I was left disappointed. Shame on you, Sony, again.
Hey, that's about 100 times more than I was thinking, so, yes!
I don't even know why I even checked this one out in the first place. This movie is one of those obscure animated films from some random animation studio that no one really knows. Yet, I saw it, and it was not good. Of course, that was to be expected based on the animation and the trailer and all that. The acting is okay at best, and the animation's alright, but this is a movie that feels more like a fever dream, or a movie that you would rather see at home. One of those obscure animated movies that you would watch at home, like as a kid or something. This is what this movie pretty much is. So seeing this get a theatrical release was shocking in my opinion. But yeah, this movie is weird. Not one that I would go out of my way to watch, but I did. Not much else to say. I've seen a lot more better stuff, even from these weird animation studios. So yeah, Hit Pig, not really good.
Our imagination will find this occasion.
Just like Hit Pig, I don't even know why I went to watch this movie. This movie is one that you'd expect to get a streaming release, but a theatrical release? I don't think so. The acting is alright, the effects are alright. The one word that I would use to describe this movie is just okay. Don't really have much to say, but the song that plays in the credits is pretty good. Enough said. The Harold and Purple Crayon, another forgettable movie that released this year.
In a sesame soy glaze. This is not working at all.
By far, one of the most disappointing movies of the year, in my opinion. I really wanted to like this movie so bad, but DreamWorks just fumbled. Kung Fu Panda 4 is just like Despicable Me 4. Fine, but doesn't really have the quality like the other films. Kung Fu Panda 4 is just disappointing. The plot is not that great. The animation really is not, amazing like the animation was from the last 3 films. They dumbed down Poe so much. Pretty much all the progression and maturity he got in the last films are not in this movie, which is, of course, not great. The new characters aren't that interesting. The villain is just very bad, in my opinion. Definitely a downgrade compared to the last villains we got from the Kung Fu Panda movie franchise. This movie could have been so much more, but in the end, it wasn't. One, if not the most disappointing movie of the year. And that really stings because I really wanted to like this movie so much. I had a lot of expectations, and all those expectations went down in the dumpster. So, DreamWorks, I know you had a really good hit this year, but this movie just wasn't it.
Because we are the Ghostbusters!
Now that I think about it, this movie isn't as good as I thought it was. It has a lot of flaws, of course, and uninteresting side plots. They made the main character even more annoying, and the cameos pretty much feel worthless in this film. This movie is just plain average. I don't know what else to say, but comparing it to Ghostbusters Afterlife or the original 2 Ghostbusters films, this one really tanked. So Sony, another L again. This has not been a great year for Sony, as you can already tell, based on this ranking.
The most important part of a heist is being aware of potential dangers.
Honestly, this is the weakest of the 4 Despicable Me films. Heck, I'd even take Minions: The Rise of Gru over this. I at least found some enjoyment from that movie. Despicable Me 4 just feels so unnecessary. If you take this out of existence, then absolutely nothing will change from the previous 3 films. Plus, the main plot here is just not entertaining enough. The villain is not that good. The new characters are very forgettable. Even the baby. Well, actually, the baby is not that forgettable, but I just didn't care for the baby at all. The baby is no Jack Jack. This movie is just meh. The only redeeming quality is that banner that Pharrell Williams made for this movie. But that's it. Moving on.
Is that a mini Kong?
This was one of the movies that I kind of forgot released this year. But yeah, this film was pretty fun, but heavily flawed, of course. If you turn your brain off and not focus on the plot too much, then you'll have a fun time. The human characters aren't interesting, and I didn't care for much of the plot, of course. I was here for the action and the kaiju fights, and that's what I got. And of course, the action and the fights were really what carried this movie for being a pretty entertaining film. So, yeah, if you're looking for a movie that's serious and has a really good plot, this is not the movie. But if you're just looking for a fun time, then Godzilla X Kong: A New Empire is a pretty good movie. And if you're a fan of both of these monsters, then boom, that's a movie for you. So it's a fun movie, not great or, amazing, but it's a fun watch.
Isn't that obvious? The room's dark. It's dark out. Hello, I'm dark.
This was another movie that I really wanted to enjoy, and based on the trailer, I thought it was going to be a really good movie. And I would say, for the most part, this movie is pretty good. And then we got to the ending. The ending was what really made this movie took a turn for the worst. This movie is fun enough, but it's also a movie that I kind of forgot existed, or another movie that I also kind of forgot even released this year. The animation's okay at best, but that's what you should expect for a movie that's going to release on Netflix. This movie is also pretty boring for the most part, but it does have a few good elements. It was just that ending that really did not make any sense, and that really left a dent for how I felt about the movie. The movie is fine enough, but it's not really anything super special, and that's why it's ranked this low on the list.
I'll sing to her, bring spring to her, and long for the day when I cling to her.
Boy, was I pretty hyped for Joker Folie à Deux. I loved the first film, of course, and I thought that this movie would be just as good or even better. But, of course, it's the complete opposite. This movie had so much potential, and they fumbled so hard. Although I don't hate it as much as the general public does, but compared to the first film, it's just really a movie that is just sad to think about. I thought that the musical elements were unique to some extent. There was a few that I did actually enjoy. And of course, Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga did great when it comes to acting. But the movie was just not what we expected or even wanted in the first place. It seemed that Warner Bros. Is trying to leave this movie in the dust because no one's talking about it anymore, and they're not even bringing it up. So even they knew that they fumbled with this movie. So I guess we should do what they did and just pretend that this movie didn't even exist.
Would have gotten them all if they weren't so fast.
They're not moving, Anya.
Spy X Family movie Code White. I liked it. It was pretty fun. A fun spy flick from a genuine anime series. The animation is very good, and the music is great. Overall, I really had a fun time with this movie. It's very solid. If you're a fan of the series, then you will have a good time with this movie. And if you're not, I would even say that this movie is a really good introduction to, get into the series in the first place. So, yeah, pretty good film.
No, because you are pretty.
Visually, Emilia Perez is great, and I did like some of the music. It's just a very obscure and bizarre movie that, I just don't really have an opinion on it, in my honest opinion. There were a lot of choices that were questionable for why they decided to come up with what they did for the movie, and I will honestly just vividly remember this movie as time goes on. So, yeah, not a movie that I will think about a lot, but I will admit the performances are pretty good.
Are those dogs fresh?
This movie honestly surprised me with how fun it was. The action definitely takes the cake as the best part of the movie, and the comedy is on point. I laughed quite a bit throughout this movie. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence proved that they still got it when it comes to their acting, and this is one movie that, of course, many have failed to do, and that is to deliver.
Let's save Christmas.
This movie was honestly pretty tough to rank because while I don't hate it as much as some others do, or some other movies on this list, I don't quite like it either. I thought it was a harmless Christmas flick that shouldn't really be taken seriously, but it certainly did not deserve to get the theatrical release. This was meant for streaming, and you can definitely tell. The acting is mediocre at best, but like I said, it's a holiday movie, and it's quite harmless. And if you really don't pay attention too much for the plot and all that jazz, you will probably have a good time with the movie.
Slap the shit out of you. I really could.
And I'm open to that in a safer environment.
Another movie that I almost forgot even released this year, The Fall Guy, is another fun and funny action movie. Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt do a great job with their roles, and the effects are pretty good for this movie, or a type of movie like this. Sure, it didn't do well financially, but it definitely is one of the most surprisingly good movies of the year, so at least it has that going for it. The Fall Guy, pretty good stuff.
One love, one art, one destiny.
I wasn't able to catch this one in theaters, but for when I did see it, I got to say that I liked it. It was very interesting to see Bob Marley's story with what was going on in Jamaica and how his music helped carry others through that tough time. Also, this movie did make me into a Bob Marley fan and appreciate his music even more. So I'd say that if you are into biopics or Bob Marley as a whole, then this is a movie they should definitely watch.
It's a service cat.
This movie surprised me with how good it was. I expected it to be as good as the last two films, but with the brilliant acting done by Lupita and Joseph, I was impressed with how this movie, went. The emotional hit bits or moments really did get me, and even the spooky moments too. The story is pretty good, and it was intriguing to see how the plot affected others on the first day. Overall, this movie is great, and if you haven't seen it, you're missing out, especially if you're a fan of these Quiet Place films.
I won't forget you, buddy.
For a Sony movie and a Sony Marvel movie overall, it's pretty good. Of course, if you don't take the movie too seriously, then you should have a great time with it. I do fond the Venom movies, so I enjoyed this one. It was also pretty sad to see these two buddy cops part ways, if you know what I mean, in the end. But I do respect Tom Hardy and his team for how they handled this character in these movies. Even when most people don't really like this movie, Venom 3 is a very solid conclusion to the trilogy, and I'm glad that they did what they did with it. I did enjoy the movie, and honestly, it's probably my favorite of the three. So, there you go.
I said if you feel it,
I haven't seen the original movie, so the nostalgic factor does not work for me. With that said, I enjoyed this movie. The visual effects is pretty good, some of the best I've even seen this year. The acting is pretty good too. Not one of the best movies of the year, but it certainly isn't one of the worst. A very solid movie that I won't mind checking again if I ever decide to in the future.
Wait, what?
I am the new All Might.
I was anticipating this movie. Sure, the last one was a bit of a downgrade compared to Heroes Rising, but I was still excited as a My Hero fan. I will say this movie is pretty much on the same level as the last one, so that's not really good, but I still had a good time with this movie. It's nice to see these characters in a not-so-depressing setting like they currently are in the anime series. As a fan of the series, you will at least get some enjoyment out of this movie. So yeah, pretty good anime film. Not the best anime movie I've seen this year. You will see once we get more down the road on this list, but it's a really fun time for My Hero fans and casuals alike.
Boat snack! Oh! Boat snack upgrade! Bacon and eggs? Why didn't you bring the pig last time?
Not gonna lie, I'm shocked to see how high this movie is on this list. I will say that this is far from even touching the original for how good it is, because this movie is just solid enough, not as good as the original. Let's just get that out of the way, but it does have its moments. It really isn't a bad movie or as bad as the internet is making it out to be. While it does have its issues, it still is quite entertaining. Sure, the new characters don't have much to offer with the plot of the movie, but they have their moments. If it wasn't for Moana and Maui's great chemistry though, then this movie wouldn't be as good in my opinion. For a sequel, this movie is serviceable, even though it originally was going to be a Disney Plus series, and you can definitely see that in this movie. It's still a good watch, at least in my opinion.
Really? Is this a figment of your imagination?
This movie is hands down one of the best sequels that was made this year. That really isn't saying much because we did get a lot of bad sequels, but at least this one doesn't join that, department. I had a really fun time with this movie. The comedy is really good, the effects are pretty good, and the soundtrack is great. The acting is done very nice from the main cast, and Michael Keaton still has it as being as good for Beetlejuice, and a very fun and semi-disturbing movie overall that fans of the original and even general audiences can enjoy. So if you're looking for a good time, then Beetlejuice 2, or just Beetlejuice is a pretty solid movie that I would definitely recommend.
Let him say it or I think his head may actually explode.
I mean, for a movie that's about imaginary friends, you really can't go wrong with it, right? Well, maybe Blumhouse did, but John Krasinski surely did not with this movie. If is a fun movie for all ages to enjoy. It even has emotional scenes that really can get to you. I'll admit, I did get a little teary-eyed by the end of this movie. This movie really is the closest thing we'll get to a live-action Pixar film, and that's a compliment. The acting is great, the score is excellent, really beautifully done by Michael Giacchino, and this movie is just simply good. A really good film, in my honest opinion. One of the films that is mostly slept on, which is sad, but if you haven't seen it yet, I definitely recommend you watch it.
Oh man, you know what'd be cool is if we told my story with Lego pieces.
I was interested to seeing this movie, or seeing how they were going to make a biopic out of Legos in the first place. This movie is just that, and I have to say that they delivered. The animation is pretty darn good. It was fascinating to see Pharrell Williams' story on how he got to fame and work with the people that he did, like Snoop Dogg and Gwen Stefani and so much more. This movie is a treat for Lego fans and those who are fans of these musicians. It's also very unique, or a very unique change for your usual biopics. So the crew who made this movie, you guys have my respect. A really good time if you're fans of Legos, of course, and if you're a fan of Pharrell Williams in general.
I'm just here for the games.
While this movie is pretty much similar, or very similar to the original, I still had a great time with it. It's nice to see how a movie like Gladiator would look in today's world, and this movie is pretty much just that. Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, and Denzel Washington really carried this movie with their acting. The cinematography and visual effects are really good. The score is pretty good too. This movie would be even better though if it had more originality rather than just following the same tropes as its predecessor. But for what we got, it's passable, and you'll have a really fun time as a Gladiator fan and as a person who just wants to watch a lot of action, especially during the Roman era. Barely missing the top 10, but Wicked is still a very strong and good movie. The acting and singing is done very well by the cast. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande truly deserve all the praise that they're getting with the roles for the movie. The sets are also quite the sight to behold. The music is really good, Popular and Defying Gravity being the standouts in my opinion, and for a part 1, this movie delivered with keeping the audience engaged and wanting more. Let's just hope that part 2 can deliver, but yeah, Wicked is pretty good, and I recommend it to those who are fans of musicals and to those who just want to see a really good movie, because Wicked is pretty much just that.
We could have built the future together.
I don't think so.
One of the most shocking movies of the year for sure. I did not expect Transformers 1 to be as good as it is. This movie really is what every Transformers fan wanted for a Transformers movie. The cast does a great job with their roles, the animation is impressive, and I respect the team for taking a darker approach to this story. The betrayal of Megatron hurts even more knowing their history. And for an animated movie, they nailed it with the action and fights. So yeah, Transformers 1 is a really good movie, and it seals a spot in my top 10. I'm looking forward to see what they do next with this animated series. I hope they continue, because this is definitely by far my favorite movie of the Transformers movies that I've seen, so I am definitely interested to see what they can cook up next.
It's a bit serious. There is something that your daddy and I...
This movie already looked good based on the trailers, and boy am I glad that they delivered. Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh both do a fantastic job in this movie. The romantic story is beautiful yet tragic at the same time. It's got funny moments, it's got sad and depressing moments. It's pretty much what anyone would expect for a movie like this, but they took the extra mile to make it even better. So I'm proud of the team for what they did, and of course, We Live in Time, one of the best movies I've seen of the year, and it definitely deserves a spot in my top 10 of this list. The most recent movie I watched on this list, and it's this high on my list? Yes, because it's that good. Going in, I expected this movie to be good, and I sure am glad that it got to those expectations. This movie is stunning visually and musically. Timothy does a fascinating job as Bob Dylan, and seeing his story on the big screen was quite refreshing, and, being taken to this time period was honestly a really interesting scope, and I enjoyed it quite a ton. Of course, the supporting actors do a great job too. Ellie Fanning and Edward Norton nailed it. The music is really great, and this movie got me into Bob Dylan's music, of course. And of course, Mr. Chalamet does a great job with the singing parts. I have to say that this movie is one of my favorite biopics, and it's a really good movie that I recommend to music fans and people who just want to watch a really good movie.
I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis!
Dune Part 2. What a movie. This movie is visually and cinematically one of the best of the year. Not just that, but one of the best, period. The acting is amazing. The cinematography is amazing. The sets and effects are all amazing. This movie as a whole is amazing. Yes, it's a bit long, but the pacing isn't even an issue here, and that's impressive. This movie leaves you of course, to want a lot more of the series, or especially looking forward to the next installment. Dennis does a really great job with directing, and Hans Zimmer, of course, nails it with the score as well. This movie rocks, and if you haven't seen it, you're definitely missing out. So, of course, I would definitely recommend it, and it's, of course, one of the best for me, in my opinion, one of the best movies of the year, definitely.
Wow, and you can quote me. Okay.
Yeah, this movie isn't number 1, but number 6 isn't an easy feat. Deadpool and Wolverine is amazing. It does what a lot of movies fail to do, and that is that it delivers for the fans. I know all of the fans who were, of course, fans of Fox Marvel were very pleased with this movie. I sure was, and I didn't even grow up with Fox Marvel. As a matter of fact, I barely watched any of the Fox Marvel stuff other than Deadpool and Logan. This movie is one of the best from the MCU as a whole, which is great because it has been a rocky couple of years for them, and they really needed this. The effects are brutal, but very good. The music is great, and the comedy is fantastic. I was cracking up every minute. This movie is a treat for Marvel fans, so Marvel, take the W, because you deserved it with Deadpool and Wolverine.
Shoyo always does something new. I'd like to play a game with you.
Yes, this movie is in my top 5. Cry about it if you must. I'm a fan of the Haikyuu anime, or barely this year I became a fan of the Haikyuu anime, and this movie delivers with what I love with the series. The long-awaited battle between the two schools is finally here, and it's done very well. Sure, the pacing may feel off, and of course a lot had to be cut due to the condensed runtime, but for what they did, I was entertained, and of course I am very looking forward to what they do with the next movie, because it was just awesome. This movie was peak. To put it frankly, this movie is peak. If you are a fan of Haikyuu, then you most likely already saw this movie, but if you haven't yet, what are you doing? Watch it. It's really good. One of my favorite parts of the entire series as a whole, because this one was just really good, and that's why it's in my top 5. Going in, I wasn't sure what to expect with this movie. I had very conflicted thoughts. Pixar doesn't really have a good track record when it comes to their sequels, other than the Toy Story sequels. But then Inside Out 2 released, and I was shocked to see that Pixar was actually able to make a great sequel, other than the Toy Story ones, of course. Pixar really needed this because the 2020s have been nothing but a rough time for the studio. So this win is exactly what they needed. Inside Out 2 delivers for fans of the original film and new fans or just casuals general. They were able to make the movie super relatable for those who have gone through what Riley has in their early teen years. The music is great, and the emotional moments really pull at your heartstrings. This movie pretty much takes me back to Pixar's golden era. So I really hope this is a step to the right direction with Elio, Hoppers, and inevitably Toy Story 5. But yeah, Inside Out 2 is a great sequel, and I'm very open to more of this franchise.
But you can call me Roz.
I mean, this doesn't come as a shock to anybody. The Wild Robot is hands down one of the best movies of the year, and it's one of DreamWorks' best for sure. And it certainly is my top choice for Best Animated Feature for the Oscars next year. DreamWorks tends to be a studio that really can make anything good, bad, great, and sometimes perfect. And The Wild Robot is that, one of the few films from DreamWorks that I would consider to be a perfect animated movie. They really nailed it with being emotional and funny. They knew how to make a compelling story that will make those who watch it feel things, many emotions, like Inside Out 2, for example. I'm so glad that they did what they did, or they tried to make this movie open to all ages, young and old. I'm always happy when DreamWorks makes a masterpiece like this. This movie really is up there with the best from DreamWorks, like The Prince of Egypt, Shrek 2, Puss in Boots' Last Wish, and many more. It's such a great movie that everyone should see. There's just 2 other movies on this list that I personally prefer more, but The Wild Robot is hands down one of the best animated movies that I've seen in a while. So DreamWorks, good job.
I read all your manga from the very beginning, back when we were both just 3rd graders.
Look Back is hands down one of the greatest movies that I've seen in my lifetime. It has a pretty short runtime, so it doesn't have any pacing issues or anything. The animation is spectacular and unique, the characters are compelling, and you get attached to them very quickly. Then they drop a bombshell on you and make you sob like a baby. But that's not why I like this movie so much. I liked it for how much it hits home for me. The main character was practically shamed by close ones for following their true passion, and then they decided to just drop it entirely when there was someone else who was able to be even better than them at what they were good at. I'm at a point in my life where I really am not sure what I really want to do. There are a couple of things that I'm interested in to pursue, but I'm not really sure if I'm even good enough for it. So this movie really hits home, and I am just a sucker for these types of anime movies. These anime studios really know how to make a movie that's up in my alley. Look Back is such a well-made movie that it objectively is my favorite movie of the year. Like, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So of course, this movie hands down is one of my favorite movies of the year, or is my favorite movie of the year. But there's just one movie that got me even more in the feels, not the sad feels, but the happy feels. And it just overshines how I felt about this movie a tad bit. And some of you already know what that movie is.
Right about one thing. This ends now.
It really was close between this and Look Back, but the kid inside me was just screaming and I gave in. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is everything I could have asked for a Sonic movie and a video game movie overall, or just a movie period. This movie not only fixed the little issues that I had with the last 2 films, but it delivered with everything else. What really makes this work is that I felt like the crew behind the movie just did what many other studios have a tough time doing, and that is to listen to the fans. Most of us wanted Keanu Reeves to play Shadow the Hedgehog, and we got that. We wanted them to play Live and Learn when we found out that this movie was going to adapt the Sonic Adventure 2 storyline, and we got that. We wanted this movie to take a darker turn and to sideline the human characters who aren't Dr. Robotnik, and they did that. See, Disney and Sony, success comes to those who listen to what the people really want. Anyway, Sonic 3 is a delight. I saw it twice, and I'm about to go say it for a 3rd time. That's how good it is. While it ain't objectively as good as Look Back or The Wild Robot, as a Sonic fan, this movie is just everything. And the Sonic fan in me just keeps me from ranking this any lower. Sonic 3 outperforms in every checklist, so obviously this movie takes the top spot for me as my favorite movie of 2024. If you haven't seen it, if you're not like a Sonic fan, if you're just a casual, I still recommend it. If you're a fan of the Sonic movies, then this movie is, of course, like recommended. This movie is just as good, and by far is the best of the 3 movies, and it might just be my personal take for the best video game adaptation in movies or in film. So Sonic 3 is that good. If you haven't seen it yet, I don't even know what the heck you're doing. Stop everything right now. Stop watching this video and go watch Sonic 3. It's that good. And like I said, it's my personal take or my pick for my favorite movie of 2024. And that's it. That's my personal list, my personal take on these 2024 movies that I've seen from worst to best. Of course, my list is not the right list. Everybody has their own taste, their own opinions on these movies. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I would love to see how you guys would rank the movies you watched this year from worst to best down in the comments. Let's have a chat about these movies. I can't believe it, but it's already the end of 2024. This is the last day of 2024. 2025 is upon us, and it's crazy to think about it. I'm going to be 20. I'm going to be in my second semester of college, and I have a lot of stuff planned for the year when it comes to my YouTube life, what I'm going to be filming and all that jazz. So stay tuned for that, and I'm sorry for the lack of uploads lately. Like I said, I've been a bit sick, and work has been pretty hectic for me lately, so I didn't really have much time to do a lot of stuff. But once I do, then of course we'll be back on the grind with Paper Ultra Elimination and all that jazz. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. This will most likely be the last video I make for the year, so I'll see you guys next time, where you'll see me or where I will be known as TDI Fan 2025. So stay tuned. I hope you guys have a happy new year, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. This is TDI Fan 2024 signing off for the final time. Peace, and have a happy new year.